we continue the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali with the, the translation and commentary portion, which, happens to be like a 400-page book, isn't it? 300, whatever. Okay, let's see, 51 rules or sutras, 55 sutras, 55 sutras, 34 sutras, 195 rules. I've seen different listings there, so 195, that does make sense. Because we have 85 plus 55 plus 55. 85 and 110 is obviously 195. I'll leave that off. So the first book, Concentration. May he who, having abandoned his primal form, exercises his power to show kindness to the world in many ways. He, with the beautiful hood and many mouths, possessed of deadly poison, and yet abolishing the mass of hindrances. He is the source of all knowledge, and whose girdle of attendant snakes produces continual pleasure. May he, the divine lord of serpents, protect you with his white stainless body. He, the giver concentration, and himself concentrated in concentration. Now, I'm going to throw in a lot more commentary with this part, so this part's taking longer anyways. So, serpents in the ancient Egyptian, the jinn, is possibly being referenced here, but we are a rainbow serpent. Sori gamma pada nisha shani dapa magariso. Try it. Just the sounds, any other chants that kind of work your way down the body, you can produce this light body that you see during your meditations. When I perform the main ritual that this room is dedicated towards, I see, the psychedelic light in, on a daily basis. If not, 5 times a day or something. So, being a master does not necessarily mean that. So, and master of the other, the other snakes are, I say I evoke on behalf. I evoke and invoke on behalf of my audience, those who I encounter, obviously. And I could say, hopefully, that I evoke some of my audience, and therefore in doing this channel, I'm a lead serpent, but that's not saying that I'm necessarily better than any of the followers. Let that be up to the Ichvara, as the term would be here. Now the exposition of yoga is to be made, so that's 1. The expression indicates that a distinct topic commences here. The authoritative book, which expounds yoga to be understood as commenced. To give a provisional definition, yoga is concentration, but this is a quality of the mind stuff, which belongs to the stages. The stages of the mind stuff are these: the restless, ksipita, the infatuated, mugdha, the distracted, viksipta, the single in intent, ekagra, and the restricted, niruddha. Of these stages, the first 2 have nothing to do with yoga, and even in the distracted state of mind, its concentration is at times overpowered by opposite directions, and consequently it cannot properly be called yoga. Yoga, like Tantra, is a word for religion, and by religion I don't mean religionism, although it can be used in that respect, but that states which the mind is single in intent, fully illuminates a distinct and real object, and causes hindrances, kletcha, to dwindle, slacken the bonds of karma, and set before as a goal to restriction. And 6 kinds of sutras, according to Manasa, the definition, samjñā, the key to interpretation, paribhasa, the statement of the general rule, vidde, the restrictive rule, niyama, an original statement, adhikara, an analogical application, adiditya. The word atha may introduce a topic. Okay, I'm not going to share all those comments, but it's called the yoga in which there is consciousness of an object, samprajnata. This, however, is accompanied by deliberation, by reflection, by joy, by the feeling of personality, asmita. This we shall set forth later, but when there is restriction of all the fluctuations, vritte, of the mind stuff, there is the concentration in which there is no consciousness of an object. I prostrate myself before him who is the cause of this world's organization, before Vrix Saketu, who and although for him fruition and other results of karma proceeding from the hindrances have ceased, is yet kindly to the world he has made. Prostrating myself before Patanjali, the sage, I proceed to set forth a brief, clear, and significant explanation of the comment by Vedavyasa. For here the exalted Patanjali, wishing to announce in brief the import of this book, which he is about to begin, that he may assist in the procedure of men of understanding, and that he may more especially make the hearer easily comprehend, composed this sutra. 1. Now the expedition of yoga is to be made. Of the sutra, the first portion, the word now, he, the author of the comment, discusses this phrase. The expression now indicates that the distinct topic commences here. The word now is used, as in the sutra, now is the jyotis. It does not imply that it is to be preceded by conditions in the first Brahma Sutra. Now by the word exposition, he means the authoritative book in the sense that it is whereby a thing expounded. Moreover, the book may enter upon its activity, which proceeded not by calm, and the other, by conditions required by the Brahma Sutra, but he must proceed also by Patanjali's desire to announce his truth. Calm, on the contrary, would follow when once there had been a desire to know, and when the knowledge had entered into action. As it is written, BAU 4, 23, and 28, after that, calm and subdued and retired and resonated and concentrated, let him behold in the self only, although it would be possible for the book to enter into action immediately after advantage had been taken of such things as students' questions, or performances, or austerities, or elixirs of life not mentioned. The reason for this is that these things would be of no use either to the student's knowledge or to the feeling indicated. For it. What then would be advantageous? The book's authoritativeness. If the book be authoritative, then, if there are no questions or austerities or elixirs, the exposition of yoga is to be accepted. If not authoritative, then even if there be questions and all other conditions, still the book is to be rejected. Thus it is by insisting upon the authoritativeness of the book that Patanjali refuses to say that the book may begin immediately after his understanding the truth and his desire to announce. But if it be agreed that the word now indicates that a distinct topic commences, that when once yoga has been mentioned as the topic of this book, the student easily understands the announcement of the import of this book, and as a whole is started into action. Now everyone knows from Shruti and Smriti and epics and Puranas that the concentration is the cause of the final bliss, and yoga is authoritative. Someone might ask, if the word now indicates the distinct commences in all the words to which is attached, then, if this is so, would not such an announcement as, now therefore the inquiry into Brahma, also be included? To prevent this mistake, the commentator uses the word here. Again, someone cites the Yoga Yajna Valkya Smrti Ran Yagarbha, and no other of ancient days is he who gave utterance to yoga. Bhakta. Perhaps he originated the word, but certainly yoga referred. Yoga, like Islam and Tantra and Religio and all sorts of, it's not like, well, once the word appears, and once the word starts being used for a path, then that's when it starts. It's like, doesn't make any linguistic sense to say such a thing. And asks how it can be said that Patanjali gives utterance to the authoritative book on yoga. In reply to the author of the sutra, says the exposition in the sense of expounding something previously expounded. And when the word now signifies that here a distinct topic commences, then the point at which the student is quite consistent. Accordingly, he says, the authoritative work which expounds yoga as commenced. Here an objector interrupts. The topic which is commenced here is not the authoritative work, but yoga insofar as it is taught, and reply to which he says is to be understood. True, we are beginning yoga insofar as it is taught, but the instrument which is to teach this yoga is the authoritative work which deals with the same. Moreover, the teacher's activity has to do more immediately with the instrument than with the thing which works upon. Accordingly, with emphasis upon the activity of the author, we are to understand that the authoritative work which deals with yoga is commenced, but the topic commenced is that yoga only which is limited by its activity as an authoritative work. And people say the 8 things of yoga. In my personal explanations, I'm talking about 7 types of mystical things, and definitely the concentration, the awareness and the non-awareness, as it would be called, would be the focus here, right? Here, accordingly, he says that the authoritative work which expounds yoga is commenced. Here, an objector interrupts. The topic which is commenced here is not the authoritative work, but yoga insofar as it is taught. In reply to which he says is to be understood. True, we are beginning yoga insofar as it is taught, but the instrument which is to teach this is the authoritative work which deals with the same. Moreover, the teacher's activity has to do more immediately with the instrument than with the thing he works upon. Accordingly, I'm repeating the line, sorry. Accordingly, with emphasis upon the activity of the author, we are to understand that the authoritative work which deals with yoga is commenced. But the topic is commenced that yoga only with it's limited in its activity by an authoritative work. That is the real point. And one must suppose that the hearing of the word now, which means that a distinct topic has commenced, suggests like the sight of a water jar carried on a girl's shoulder at early morning, another meaning, namely, it serves as an auspicious beginning. Doubt as to an actual thing, yoga, is occasioned by doubt as to the meaning of the word yoga. This doubt he removes by stating that yoga, but in the phrase, yoga is concentration, is etymologically derived from the stem yuja, Datupata 468, in the sense of concentration, and not from the stem yuji 77, in the state of conjunction. Another objection is raised. The yoga which is to be described as a whole, and concentration is a part of it, and a mere part is not the whole. The reply is, pradaksina is the word for circumambulation, okay? The reply is the words, but this. The word cha has the sense of but, one T, and distinguishes the whole from the part, which belongs to all the stages. First, the stages or states which are to be described. Madhumati 354, Madhupraktika 348, Vichoka 136, Samakarachesa 3:9. These belong to the mind stuff. In all these stages is found that yoga, the more special mark of which the restriction of the mind stuff, but concentration is the part of this and is not this as its special mark. And the words yoga is concentration as a statement for etymological purposes only, insofar as one is not dwelling upon the differences between the whole and the part, but he is referring to the practical purpose of what he calls yoga. He says it is the restriction of the fluctuations of mind stuff. This is the stricter sense of the term. To those Vachisikas who hold the view that fluctuations are sensations inherent to the soul, and that therefore the restriction of them would also involve the mind stuff. Restriction of them would also involve the soul, Atman, which they inherit, which they inhere. To them, in rebuttal, he says a quality of the mind stuff. The term mind stuff, chitta, he uses as a partial expression for the inner organ. Anta karana, the thinking substance, buddhi. The point is that the absolute eternal energy of the intellect, chitta chakti, since it's immutable, cannot have sensations as its properties. But the thinking substance may have them. An objector says this may be so, but if yoga belongs to all its stages, why then, sir, since you concede that the restless and the infatuated and the distracted sense are also stages of mind stuff, and since there would be among these states reciprocally, at least, there's a restriction of fluctuations, then yoga would have to include these states also. Tatrape. In replying to this, definitely he makes clear which stages are to be included and which not included. In yoga, by words of beginning with the restless incessantly thrown by force of rajas upon this, or that object is excessively unstable. 2. The infatuation, because of this preponderance of tamas, is filled with the fluctuation of sleep. 3. The distracted differs from the restless in that, although prevailingly unstable, is occasionally stable. This prevailing instability, being neither natural or generated by diseases and languor and other obstacles, later 130, is to be described. 4. The single intent is the focused. 5. The restricted mind stuff is that in which all the fluctuations are to be restricted, is which nothing remains but subliminal impressions, samskara. In spite of the fact that fluctuations of the restless and infatuated, the first two of these are restricted by by the others, and since these two are not even indirectly causes of final bliss, and since they contend against it, they are so far removed from the possibility of being called yoga that it is not expressly denied that these two are yoga. But in the case of distracted state, since occasionally it has been stability, when directed towards the real object, he denies that it can be yoga in the words of these stages. When the mind is distracted, and concentration of which the occasional stability of the mind stuff, when directed to a real object, cannot properly be called yoga. Why this can be called yoga? Because it has come under the adverse influences of distraction, which is the opposite of this. When fallen into the hands of antargata, of a troop of opponents, it is hard for a thing to even be what it is, and it is still harder for it to produce effects, just as anyone can see that a seed which has fallen into the fire and stayed there 3 or 4 moments has not power, even a stone, of sprouting. This is the real meaning. If the concentration which has come under the adverse influence of distractions be not yoga, what then is yoga? To this he makes answer, but that which, when the mind is single in intent, by word real, bhuta, he excludes any imaginary object, since sleep is a fluctuation of mind stuff. Since sleep, a fluctuation of mind stuff, is also single in intent with regard to tamas, a real bhuta object, the particular sva aspect of a substance upon which it, sleep, depends. Alambana, so he says distant, sad, which means clear, chabana, in which the sutra aspect becomes evident in a very high degree, but that thing is not clear, in which the tamas is in preponderance, as much as the tamas is the cause of hindrances. Now the perception of a thing, either by verbal communication, agama, or by inference, we may grant by luminous dhyatanam bhavad api, still so far as it is immediately known, it does not destroy undifferentiated consciousness, avidya, which we directly experience. For in such illusions as the sight of 2 moons or defective sense of orientation, verbal communications or inferences do not destroy undifferentiated consciousness. Accordingly, he uses the word fully, pra, because it means luminous to the full extent, prakarsam, and fully. Oh, and because it alludes to immediate perception in the case of yoga, the feeling of personality, asmita, and other hindrances have their root in undifferentiated consciousness, avidya. Furthermore, since knowledge, destroys undifferentiated consciousness, avidya, and since when knowledge emerges, the hindrances arising from undifferentiated consciousness and so on are destroyed, inasmuch as they are contrary the one to the other, inasmuch as then the cause of hindrances would be destroyed. Therefore, he says, and causes the hindrances to dwindle. This, then, is the reason why yoga slackens the bonds which consist of karma, and that the passages by a figurative use of the cause of the effect, he employs the word karma, whereas the subtle influences, apurva, are intended. The word slackens means brings them down from operation. The latter, 213, he says, so long as the root exists, there will be fruition from it. Finally, sets before as a goal the restriction of all fluctuations. Moreover, since this yoga, consciousness of objects, is fourfold, he employs the words beginning. This consciousness yoga he describes, not conscious of objects, with the words all of the fluctuations. In other words, we know that kila, that sources of the valid ideas and other fluctuations, pramanandivritte, made of rajas and tamas, are restricted in yoga consciousness of objects, while fluctuations of sattva are retained, but in yoga consciousness of an object, all fluctuations, whatever, are restricted. Therefore, the final result is established siddham, that belonging to all stages means occurring in all these stages. Muddhamati, and on which four are all concluded that these two stages of consciousness and the unconscious yoga. Now, okay, so verse 2 and perhaps some more is part of the next video. But see, ideas like Scientology of the non-abrogation are clearly go way, way back, far before the Yoga Sutras. And we see in yoga a term where, unlike where you're in charge of your own psychological treatment, as you don't need psychiatry, you don't need psychology as a separate entity. It's part of the whole system, but you're directly in charge of it. Instead of you sit down and tell me what the problem is and all that, it's time to take charge of one's own life. Namaste. We both make mention.